In this video I will explain my interpretation of deviation calculation for initial deviation, and I will also explain the differences between the formula used in the weapon comparison tool and my formula. In this comparison I have three weapons, as you can see: the Desert Eagle, the MG36 and the RPK 74M. First we take a look at this value that supposedly shows initial deviation, in this case when firing from the hip and standing. And the first thing we're going to do is just to recreate that value by using the formula and applying the values. So here it is. The formula, that word is a tongue breaker for me for some reason. The formula for hipfire deviation and ADS deviation. Since we are standing in this example, we are using dev mode stand. You can find all the weapon data in the Battlefield Play4Free folder if you want to see them for yourself. Okay, then let's start calculating. Nah, wrong beginning. And as you can see, the value for hipfire when standing matches the value of the comparison tool. However, there are two doubts that I have about the formula used, and the first one is gain per shot being used as part of initial deviation, because gain per shot is an additional deviation that is added when you are firing the weapon, and it is a deviation added per shot. So each time you fire the weapon, that kind of deviation is added, which is, by the way, the center value of this row, 0.9 for the Desert Eagle. And yeah, that is partially the reason why I made that deviation test with the Deagle. One of the reasons was to show that the Deagle is a quite accurate weapon when aiming on sight. And the second reason was to show the firing deviation, or to be more precise, the gain per shot. Of course, there's also the counteracting effect of the deviation recovery or deviation settling, which I will explain later. But yeah, just take a look at the crosshair. You see how fast it grows and what kind of a jump there is? I mean, it already sounds pretty weird when you're trying to apply a logical view to it. Like, you fire your weapon, the crosshair is growing, caused by the gain per shot, and that gain per shot, that is obviously an after effect of firing, should be applied to the shot you just fired? Nah, that doesn't make sense to me, and as you just have seen from the video, it's just not possible for gain per shot to be added to the first shot. I mean, yeah, the deviation of gain per shot to be added for the first shot. No, then it wouldn't have that accuracy. Yeah, okay, that pretty much covers the first aspect. And the second aspect is one of the components, and in particular, deviation mod zoom. because when you look at the MG36 and the RPK 74M, according to the weapon comparison tool, the MG46 has a better hipfire deviation than the RPK. And even if you subtract the gain per shot, the relation between those two does not change much. We can change that real quick. Not change, check. As you can see, gain per shot of the MG36 is 0.2, and for the RPK it's 0.22. So that difference does not explain why the MG36 supposedly is better than the RPK at hip firing. No, it's because of this particular component, which in my opinion applies to ADS deviation only. And since the MG46 has a lower deviation mod zoom, it helps the MG46 in having a lower deviation, at least shown in the weapon comparison tool, when in reality it probably hasn't. Just to show you the results of my own interpretation. Here's a deviation, initial deviation for standing and firing from the hip with the MG46 with no attachments being used. That's why I marked it as default here. And here is a deviation with the RPK. And for this behavior, I mean not behavior, for this way of thinking, I even have, now I would like to call it some proof. Those two screenshots show the MG36 and the RPK in completely settled state without any attachments when standing, and yeah, being in hipfire mode. Here we have the crosshair of the MG36, and now take a look at the crosshair of the RPK. Let's switch back and forth real quick for comparison. As you can see, the crosshair of the RPK is obviously smaller than that of the MG36. And that obviously means that those two values can't be correct. I mean, it shows that the RPK has worse hipfire than the MG36, but from the screenshots you have just seen that that's not the case. The theory of deviation modifier zoom only applying to ADS calculation also matches with the game where the formula is taken from, which is Battlefield 2 Project Reality. And here's an explanation of the deviation calculation. And take a look at that row. When not looking down the sides, set the deviation mod zoom modifier to 1. And what happens when you set a modifier to 1 in a product? Like, let's say we have def mod zoom here, and since we are not aiming down the sides, it is replaced with 1. Yeah, multiplying by 1 does not change the outcome of a product. Yeah, and so it matches with my interpretation, which means that deviation mod zoom is not part of hipfire calculation. And assuming that my theory is correct, it basically means that most weapons, especially those with a high gain per shot, are much more accurate than shown in the weapon comparison tool. Of course, I have no hardcore proof like having the formula from a developer or finding it somewhere in the game files, but in my opinion, or not in my opinion, for me, this formula makes sense, this modified one, because it matches in-game experience. I've also compared some other weapons, for example, the Desert Eagle and the MP4 pistol on hipfire. And yeah, according to my interpretation, they have the same hipfire cone. And when you take a look at both of those pistols in-game and watch the hipfire crosshair, it's actually the same. So yeah, that's just another backup, so to speak, for my theory. I will leave it to you if you want to trust the comparison tool or if you think that my interpretation is correct. But the main purpose of this video was just to show the background of my way of thinking. So in case you were interested in knowing how I actually come to the values that I mention in my videos for deviation, now you know. Okay, that pretty much covers this video. I hope it was somewhat useful to you and hopefully not too complex. But yeah, that's it for now. See you on the battlefield.